All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac getting ready for a little MLB strategy show. We have wall-to-wall baseball today, games from starting at noon, ending around 9 o'clock. It is the Coors Field extravaganza that is the cherry on top of the evening slate. I will be heading out this afternoon to go do a 5K at a brewery. Greg, my wife is now running a half marathon, and then she will run a 10K at the brewery. Those are what do we say, joined races or united races, because they add up to 17.76 miles in honor of our nation's founding. What's going on with you? Are you feeling a little patriotic today?
Not particularly. To me, just all the days blend together. It's just another day where I get to talk about baseball, play baseball slates. Actually, what I'm most excited for today is the UFC card tonight, which is going to be a banger. So for me, that's really what most of my day is going to be built around. Is I've got people coming over tonight. So that, to me, is the thing I'm looking forward to the most, more so than 4th of July, which I'm just working on the 4th of July anyway. I'm going to be doing baseball shows. So you guys could count on all of that. But or else nothing else changes much.
All right. Well, I am wearing the What Would Sean V Do t-shirt today. So once we get up to 100 likes today, I will let everybody see what that looks like. It's been a couple seasons since I've had this on. Sean put himself in purgatory there for a while. He got scared away by one Josh Engelman, but he's brave. He's back. He's bold. He rejoined YouTube chat last season. So we get up to 100 likes. We'll see the Sean V, What Would Sean V Do t-shirt. All right, a couple things. We have some free content today, so help us out. Give us a like and a subscribe. That makes us happy, helps us battle that YouTube algorithm. But in return to our free shows, we've also got the MLB ownership projections today are free, as are the UFC pro plays. We will be covering the games for the 4 o'clock main slate. There's a game or two going off at noon, at 2 o'clock, and then I think there's like a 3 o'clock game, and then there are the 4 o'clock games. We'll cover those, and then there'll be another show, another MLB Live Before Lock at 4 o'clock, covering those games starting at 6. DraftKings is going with the 5-game main slate. I don't think Yahoo has posted or FanDuel has posted theirs yet, but they'll probably mirror that as well. Plus, then 3 of those games are 7 o'clock or later, so there'll be additional baseball after that. And we do have UFC Live Before Lock. That will be from 5 to 6 to get you ready for that, as well as Greg mentioned. All right, let's dive on in here, Greg. Let's look at our first game here. We've got St. Louis. Let me get to the right screen here. St. Louis at Philadelphia here. It is going to be humid and relatively hot, in the upper 80s, low 90s in most of the mid-Atlantic. So we'll want to keep an eye on Washington, Philadelphia, and I think the other games at New York. There could be some afternoon thunder showers as the weather starts to cool just a little bit. Sometimes there'll be spontaneous condensation that turns into thunder showers. As long as they're not going to be over the parks, it shouldn't be anything more than a delay. Nothing's really at risk of being postponed, but I do want to call that out because sometimes you'll see some of the sites highlighting those for weather. Again, if something sits over the stadium, could be a problem, but we're not really expecting that. So turning it over to you, to Greg. Matthew Liberatore going against Kyle Gibson. What do you got for us in this battle of the bellwethers? I made that up. There was alliteration. It makes no sense, but there we are.
So, I mean, just to talk about what you said before, because it relates to the pitchers, this is very hitter-friendly weather. And as a result, the Phillies have the 3rd highest top stack odds on the slate. The Cardinals, we have with the 5th highest top stack odds. So it's going to be hard to like either of the pitchers in this spot. Liberatore is a 6.36 ERA. Kyle Gibson a little bit better at 4.04, but not very many strikeouts for either of these pitchers. They're facing good offenses, favorable hitting conditions. I think what we're really going to have to talk about here is how much we want to play these offenses, because the Phillies in particular are going to be very popular. But this is not a spot to get to either of these pitchers. Number one, because it's favorable hitting conditions. And then number two, there's just a lack of strikeout upside.
Yeah, and that's something that's going to be a theme across. We sort of have the haves and the have-nots for these games. There's actually a lot of decent pitchers going in this one. We'll talk about a couple in our next game here, but this one we're looking at the offenses, as Greg mentioned. Nick Castellanos on finally heating up, 3,700 on DraftKings. I think that's fine. Rhys Hoskins, JT Realmuto, Alec Boehm. I think Alec Boehm's an intriguing option at 3,100 on DraftKings. He's someone I have on the short list for potential home run upside. He's been in a little bit of a slump inside of his own head, throwing a few tantrums here and there, but I do like his matchup for him. On the other side, you've got Nolan Arenado. He was my top one-off of the day yesterday in the free Spotlight Hitters and Top Stacks or Spotlight Pitchers and Top Stacks article. He got his second cycle of his career. Do you think he gets his third today, Greg, in the righty-righty matchup?
Most likely not. If you were asking me to bet yes or no on Nolan Arenado to have a cycle today, the answer is probably going to be, well, definitely going to be no when it comes to that side. But overall, this is a really interesting spot to stack the Cardinals because, like I was saying before, this is really favorable hitting conditions for the offenses. And Kyle Gibson isn't good. He's not bad. If you were to ask somebody, what does a number 3/number 4 starting pitcher look like? Somebody who's the middle of the rotation guy. It's Kyle Gibson, 4.48 ERA, 4.04 expected ERA. He's pretty steady, doesn't have too many great starts, doesn't really have too many blow-up starts. But whenever you're putting him in a spot where it's really favorable offensive hitting conditions, you have to be concerned about him because he doesn't generate a lot of swing and misses, doesn't lead to a lot of strikeouts. So 20.2% strikeout rate. And what happens when there's favorable hitting conditions and the ball is getting put in play a lot? There's a chance for just a lot of upside for the offense. And this is not a team that's picking up ownership either. So as of right now, this is one of the most positive leverage stacks we have in the top stack stool. Because like I said before, the Cardinals have the 5th highest top stack odds on the slate, but they're only projected for 4% ownership. So 4% ownership with a 9% chance to be the top scoring team over on DraftKings. And then similar stuff over on FanDuel, they're 4.5% owned, but whatever. It's more or less the same number we're looking at there. So I think the Cardinals are a really, really strong contrarian option.
Alrighty, let's continue along here. For those of you playing the early games, we now have all 4 lineups in. That would be the Rays, the Blue Jays, the Orioles, and the Twins. We're not covering those on this show, but we do have them in our projections and all of the rest of our tools. Plus, I do hit on some of them in someone was asking for free baseball content. In addition to the ownership today, I've got the Everyday Spotlight Pitchers and Top Stacks article. I'll drop the link to that there. We just posted hot off the press. We'll talk, or that will cover a couple of hitters called out in the bottom section there for this 2-game slate. Moving on to our next game of the 4 o'clock slate here. A couple of good pitching options. Dylan Cease going into San Francisco, taking on Logan Webb. 3.3 implied run total here for the White Sox, 3.9 for San Francisco. Even though this is a 1 o'clock local start time, we're looking at temperatures in the mid 50s, which is pretty much par for the course when it comes to playing next to the Bay. A couple interesting things. Dylan Cease. So I was looking at his numbers, Greg, just absolutely putting together some phenomenal numbers this season. Yet he's still only a fringe top 5 candidate in the American League Cy Young awards, because you've got Alex Manoah, you've got McClanahan in there. I can't remember off the top of my head the other two, but it's
Verlander. By the way, Ohtani's in there now.
Oh, Ohtani was one.
Yeah. So I pulled up the odds right now as you're bringing up. Right now, McClanahan and Verlander are tied for 1. Then it's Manoah, Cole, Ohtani, and then Gausman and Cease tied.
It's pretty impressive, especially 2 from Toronto as well. So it's kind of a tight field, but we are just about at the halfway point here for most of the teams. A lot of stuff can change, but I wanted to point out that Dylan Cease in his last 27 innings, so 5 starts, just 27 innings, but he's averaging over 100 pitches in those innings. This was in June. He had allowed 1 earned run. It was a solo shot by Jonathan Araz, who was a second baseman for the Baltimore Orioles. Otherwise, only 1. He was the only one of the 33 potential base runners that scored. Very, very impressive. Cease leads the league with the 13.4% strikeout rate. We know that the best hitters for San Francisco do come from the left side of the plate. However, across his last 500 righty-lefty matchups, Cease does have a 32% strikeout rate. Very impressive here. How do you like Cease? Transition us into Logan Webb, because I think those are 2 of the premier starters for the slate.
Yeah, going to be hard not to like these guys. And I think as a lot of the audience knows at this point, I'm generally okay with playing the chalkier pitchers on the slate as long as I'm differentiating at offense. And I've already mentioned there's a contrarian offense in the St. Louis Cardinals. I like a whole bunch today. So if I'm going to be rostering the Cardinals as my most roster, at the very least one of my most rostered stacks, that gives me the ability to get pretty chalky at pitcher, which is where both these guys make sense. And this is also not a slate where we're looking at any pitchers as being like 40 or 50% owned or anything like that. We've got mid 30% ownership on both Dylan Cease and Logan Webb. And when you consider how pitcher friendly the ballpark is in San Francisco, and then also Dylan Cease, I think the matchup almost doesn't matter for Cease. His stuff is so good that when he's on, he's generating a lot of swing and misses anyway. And then as for Logan Webb, the Chicago White Sox, they have right around the 90 WRC plus against right-handed pitching and strike out a whole bunch against righties. So I think this is a really good spot for both of these pitchers. And they're both guys that I want to get to on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Dylan Cease, 18% projected ownership on FanDuel, same number for Logan Webb. And then, like I said, also similar on DraftKings, where these guys are both mid 30% ownership. And neither of them are expensive. 9,500 for Cease on DK, 8,800 for Logan Webb. They're two of the more expensive pitchers on the slate, but there's not a single DK pitcher today that's priced over 10K. Then for FanDuel purposes, 9,800 for Logan Webb, 10,700 for Dylan Cease. It's a little more expensive, but still not problematic because the pricing on FanDuel for hitters ends up being so soft for the most part that it's easy to pay up at pitching. So it's easy to get to both these pitchers, in my opinion. I'm going to be rostering both of them a whole bunch.
Yeah, and we'll call out a couple cheap options on the hitting side here from DraftKings. There's a few misprices in there, Alex Kirilloff being one of them. I think I've lost track. I was writing up all the different slates, so they're all jumbled in my mind. But there's Michael Chavez is out there. I think at like 2,000 minimum on DraftKings. There's some misprices here and there. So there's plenty of ways you can get in both of the top or two top pitchers plus the stack of your choice today with a few select one-offs, which should make things interesting. If you're targeting against either one of these pitchers, is there a particular hitter you want to go with, hitter or two, just looking for that direct leverage against the rest of the field? Against Logan Webb in particular, it doesn't seem like a fool's errand. And we do know that Dylan Cease, while he has been absolutely phenomenal, I think he should be the player of the month for June. That hasn't been posted yet, but he can give up the home runs. And at this point, we're just doing a little home run hunting. Maybe we get lucky with somebody on base. Who would you target these guys with sort of as your long shot plays?
Yeah, so
or let's put this way, your baseball being baseball plays.
Yeah, no, there's no real reason for me to want to get to either of these offenses. It's a pitcher-friendly park. It's also two really good pitchers. So if you're playing 150 lineups, you could make a case for any individual offense to get to a small percentage of them. But I know most of our audience is only playing a handful of lineups, and I would not recommend stacking either of these offenses in that situation.
All right, perfectly fine. Let's maneuver on to the next game here. Milwaukee Brewers at the Pittsburgh Pirates. Do you think Milwaukee has any runs left in the bag after dropping 19 of them last night? That was a bit of a debacle. Did you see that? Oh, where is he? There was a reliever that ended up allowing 8 earned runs before he got his first out, and then he retired the next 3 batters after giving up 8 runs. That was just a bit of a disaster last night. I'm trying to look up the name of the guy. It was like
about it. He is
it's Cam Vio. I had him in my article.
Cam Vio. Not only did he get obviously allow all of those runs before we recording out. Do you know how many pitches it took him to get his first out?
No, I didn't see. I didn't look. Oh, go ahead.
His first out was recorded on his 48th pitch, and then the crowd gave him a standing ovation, which couldn't have felt great.
So from my notes, I said things were so bad in the Pirates in the 8th inning. Reliever Cam Vio gave up 8 runs, 6 hits, 3 walks, and a home run before recording his first out.
Yeah.
Yikes. That was not a good day.
There was also errors involved, so the defense did him no favors. But still, it takes a special kind of bad performance to do something like that, which I assumed just based on a guess. I thought that was a major league record. Right, okay. A reliever coming in and giving up 8 runs, and maybe position players pitching notwithstanding. But somebody sent this to me. For the Detroit Tigers at one point, a guy named Hank Bowery came in relief and gave up 9 runs and recorded 0 outs, and they took him out of the game.
Oh, infinity times 9.
Yep, that's no good.
That is no, that is a yikes. That is horrible. That is horrible. You know who also is kind of horrible? Bryce Wilson. So Bryce Wilson was forever a top prospect with Atlanta, never really put it all together, pitched for parts of 4 different seasons with them, ended up having close to a 6 earned run average before coming over to the Pirates. This year for the Bucks, in 33.2 innings and 8.29 ERA, he issues a walk every other inning. This is just not a great matchup for him, though they are not household names. You've got Christian Yelich, Rowdy Tellez, Willie Adames, Colton Wong, Luis Urias, former Pirate himself, Andrew McCutchen. Up and down the lineup here, we've got some solid hitters here. This is not chasing 19 runs because I don't think we're going to see that again from the Brewers, but it's another great matchup here. So I'm quite interested in them. How are you feeling about them? And then what do you think about Ashby, who is coming off of the injured list to make this start?
Yeah, so let's start by talking about the Brewers side of the game. And this is a team also where, I don't think the game before frequently impacts ownership. If there's extreme situations, like we saw the Dodgers last week, they had a couple of really shitty games at Coors Field. And I think something like that, when they were uber chalky, that might prevent the field from wanting to get to them more the next day. A situation where the Brewers just absolutely smashed on last night's slate and put up 18 runs. Do you think that's going to impact ownership? Because this is one of those things that's really hard to project for, but I think at some point a human element has to come into play. And I think that there's going to be some people that are more apt to play the Brewers just because of what happened yesterday. I mean, we already have them projected to be really popular. We have them as the most popular projected stack on the slate. I wouldn't be surprised if that number ends up being even higher just based on what happened yesterday.
Well, I think that's also heavily influenced on DraftKings by their salary. Damn near everybody's under 4,000. I mean, we got Luis Urias is at 2,800, Carantini at 3,300, Tyrone Taylor at 2,600, et cetera. None of these guys are going to break the bank. Even 2-time batting champion Christian Yelich, 4,500. So I think that's going to influence it more than actually what happened yesterday. And these guys are not necessarily household names. It's one thing if you get the Yankees blowing up the Boston Red Sox in a weekend series and people chase it. It's another thing. It's the Brewers. Sorry. You can talk for a sec. I can see what my dog's mad about.
All good. So EMac's dog, who wants to stack the Milwaukee Brewers, I guess. I don't know what the reaction was, but there was something. EMac's dog was really, really fired up with us talking about the Milwaukee Brewers. So I don't know. Maybe EMac's dog faded Milwaukee last night. Maybe EMac's dog had a 6-figure hit last night by playing the Milwaukee Brewers, but either way, really fired up about them. But here's my concern when it comes to Milwaukee. It's clearly not the spot. Bryce Wilson is no good. The Brewers have a really good offense, one of the higher power upside offenses in baseball, but we have them projected for a whole bunch of ownership. 15% ownership going to them on DK, a little more reasonable on FanDuel at 11%, but either way, slight negative leverage on both sites. It's not crazy enough negative leverage that I'd want to take them out of my player pool, which you guys know there's been offenses like the Dodgers in Coors Field or the Twins last night where I was just been really staunchly against, like, no, this is too much ownership going there. This isn't one of those spots, but it is a team to be underweight to the field too when it comes to Milwaukee Brewers cash games. Load up on them. Tournaments, though, I do think they're going to end up going over-owned.
All right, that's a reasonable take on that. Going against Ashby here, I guess Brian Reynolds, I did mention Chavez, he's at 2,000 even. You've got Diego Castillo, 2,700. I don't think they're horrible. We saw Ashby treat us well with the strikeout props for a couple games, but his 3 games prior to going on the injured list kind of came back to earth there. That's to be expected. Hopefully Terry's not listening. I'm working out a trade to get Ashby on our dynasty team, or my dynasty team, in the same league as Terry. And it's
you guys are in a league together?
Yes, I got to join his crazy, insane league that he talks about.
One where he's got
4 different drafts. There's like minor league drafts. There's rookie drafts. There's regular drafts. Now we're doing a waiver draft for July. It's crazy. People are trading picks 3 years in advance. There's multiple salary cap. It's all over the place. And it's for money. So the mistakes can be a little bit expensive for the new guy that's trying to work his way through a 9-page rule document. But it's fun.
Yeah, no, it's I was in one dynasty baseball league. And my approach to it at the time was, I'm just drafting all the top prospects. I'm going to try to trade for the top prospects because I feel like I was more in tune with it than other people in my league at the time. So I had built up a team that had Giancarlo, then Mike Stanton. I had Mike Trout. I had who else or something? I had Altuve. I had Freddie Freeman. I had Brandon Belt. And what happens? We get 2 years into the league and everybody gets tired of it. Like, nah, we don't want to do this league anymore. So my team was poised to win every championship for forever. And then the league folded. So I just gave away 2 years worth of league dues. Anyway, the reason being is what I learned from that is if you're in a dynasty league, you just play to win now because you don't know if the season's even going to happen the next year. But I forgot what was the question you asked me as it pertained to this slate?
Oh, I was just going to say, is there any
Ashby.
Pirates?
Yeah. So Ashby. I have no interest in stacking the Pirates. I love Aaron Ashby as a young pitcher, especially I really like his strikeout upside. It's hard for me to think, though, with him being a young, really well-regarded prospect, that the Brewers are just going to let him full go in his first start back from a stint on the injured list. So I'm going to be avoiding the Pirates, but also Ashby as well, just because unless we definitively hear that there's no pitch restriction for him today, I think it's going to be a short outing.
And that makes the most sense in all this. There's no reason for them to push him whatsoever, which still has me being okay with the super discounted one-offs there for Chavez and Diego Castillo, especially at second base shortstop, as I'm trying to work in those two top pitchers and a top stack. All right. An excellent podcast host once said, and away we go. We are heading into the Washington area. We've got the Nationals hosting the Miami Marlins today. Jackson Tetro is taking on Daniel Castillo. Castillo is someone that is worthy of SP2 status here. Lefty going against the Nationals. The one thing you want to remember, the Nationals do strike out below average. They also do pretty much everything else below average. So this is going to be warm and muggy. There is a 10 to 15 mile an hour breeze intermittently blowing to right field. A little bit of chance of those humidity showers that we talked about. Again, nothing that should curtail the game by any stretch. But if something sits over the stadium for 25, 30 minutes, we could see a pitching change. That's about the only risk we see here. Tetra, I'm not particularly enthused by. Daniel Castillo, I'd be okay with. The hitters on either side feels like one-offs at best here. How are you approaching this one? The middle of the Marlins order, 2,200, 3,100, 3,200, 3,500 on DK. DK that's buy one, get one price for the Marlins.
Yeah. So if you look at the numbers we have on the Marlins, here's why they appear to be a pretty decent stack for today. They're projected for 9% ownership. They have 9% top stack odds. So all of that, you'd say, okay, that's in line. That seems about reasonable. But to what you said before, the prices are so cheap. We have them with a 16.6% chance to be the top value stack over on DK. And then it's something similar over on FanDuel. 9% ownership, 9% top stack odds, but a 14.4% chance to be the top value. So I don't know that 5-man stacks for the Marlins are going to be necessary, just because what we were talking about before with pitchers like Dylan Cease and Logan Webb, the top end pitchers aren't all that expensive today. But individually as one-offs, this is a really, really good team to target because top and bottom throughout the order, a lot of these hitters look like really good value plays.
Question for you. I know that Eric talks a fair amount about setting up his one-off pools. I know Terry does as well when he's building out lineups. Do you do anything for that when you're doing your crunches, or do you just sort of let the players flow through?
No. Wherever the players like, especially when it comes to individual baseball hitters, I'm not going to go into Fantasy Cruncher and pretend I know better than what the numbers show who the best one-offs are. So it's if I get some random 9-hitter who shows up in 20% of my lineups, I'll be like, okay, that's an issue. I'm just going to give them the thumbs down in Fantasy Cruncher so it appears less often. But I have a feeling when I just run my lineups, 150 of them, I'm going to end up getting to a lot of Marlins players as one-offs just because of what their prices are.
Okay, that's fair. I was just curious on that one. Nelson Cruz, always good against lefties, even in his age 42 season. But aside from that, nameless and faceless group of fellows here for the Nationals. Continuing along, we have some potential fireworks in this game. You've got Jose Urquidy, who has been solid, though not spectacular. On the other side, you have Patrick Sandoval, who has been surprisingly effective going against one of the best lefty hitting offenses that we've seen over the last several years. And this includes even without Yordan Alvarez, with Springer no longer plying his trade in Houston. They're still phenomenal against lefties. They've, of course, got Altuve. You've got Bregman, Gurriel, gazillion years old, but the defending AL batting champion. You've got Jeremy Pena, who's been quite talented. Doesn't look like much of a pitching situation here. Do you expect either of these pitchers to come across your two pitcher site player pool?
Yeah, so no interest in the pitchers. From the Astros side, we have to know what the lineup looks like, because whether Yordan Alvarez is in or out is going to be a big deal. He's arguably the best hitter in baseball, and had that collision with Jeremy Pena, 4 days ago now? Both of them end up getting evaluated for concussions. We haven't seen Yordan play since. If he's in the lineup, it's a big boost for the Houston Astros. If not, then it's going to be a little bit of a downgrade for them. But either way, I'm really looking at the Angels side of this game as a good contrarian offense to get to, because Jose Urquidy's a 4.36 ERA this year. It's not bad, but his underlying numbers are miserable. He's a 5.83 expected ERA, a 4.82 FIP. And then you also look at his outlook as a pitcher and the contact he allows. It's a lot of fly balls. He only has a 36.5% ground ball rate. He also has an above average home run to fly ball rate. So at some point, I think we're going to see Jose Urquidy really start to get lit up, especially because he doesn't generate strikeouts. He doesn't have great stuff. He only has a 17% strikeout rate. So when you consider there's a guy who's putting the ball in play, it's mostly fly balls. It's a lot of hard contact. There aren't strikeouts to be had there. There's going to be starts in the near future where he just gets totally blasted. And we haven't seen that yet this year. He's only given up more than 4 runs twice the entire season, but he's also only struck out more than 5 hitters twice the entire season. Something has to give, and I think it's ultimately just going to be some really big offensive performances against Jose Urquidy. And this is a boom-bust offense he's going up against in the Los Angeles Angels. Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani. They've got some young hitters with power upside, but could also swing and miss a lot. But does it matter when Jose Urquidy isn't capable of getting swing and misses from big league hitters? So only 4% projected ownership going to the Angels, and I like being overweight to that number.
And that makes sense. Calling out for your DK salary savings at first base, you've got Jared Walsh, who is coming in at 3,600. That's a reasonable option. Of course, we have a lot of good first basemen on this particular slate here. Anything else you want to highlight from this game? Despite it being two preeminent teams here, it feels like a sure, I'll take a smattering of the hitters kind of answer, which a little surprising, but that's where we are. Baseball, it brings you something new every day.
Yeah. So when it comes to, sorry, what was the question? And I just totally
anything else? I'm trying to get us out of this game.
Yeah. No, nothing else.
Okay.
You move on.
And because we're going to move on and do a little read, because that's the point of the show that we are in. So we want to tell you how to get all the great Stokastic tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there. You can get that with the Stokastic Platinum Pass. This includes full access to all premium content and tools on the site, including player projections, ownership projections, the lineup builder, premium Discord, and much, much more. If you're a new user of Stokastic, you can save 50%. That's 50, half off your first month of Stokastic just by using the promo code MLB Strategy Show, all caps, all one word, MLB Strategy Show for 50% off. And then, of course, if you really are only a seam head, you can sign up now for the weekly MLB package for as low as $18.95 per week. Please remember that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and not included in the base packages, but is quite easy to add on to any existing subscription. Have you given out any Stokastic subscriptions for birthdays, holidays? I figure your family, they all must have one by now, right? Or do you guys all share the same login at your house?
No. So the only ones I've given away to is my wife's boyfriend, who really loves DFS. So he gets a free membership when he asks for his birthday, but no, nobody else.
Nobody else. They're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just checking. Yeah.
But by the way, there is so much work going on in my house right now. So before you ask me the question, and there's guys above me taking the chimney down. So I just hear hammering. There's somebody working in the kitchen as well, and he's listening to like opera music. So there's so much going on behind me right now. So that was what caused me to space out before.
All right, chat. There's guys taking the chimney down at Greg's house. I'll let you do with that what you will. do with that what you will. Next game we have here, this one rather interesting. Conflicting information on the starters between Chris Bubic and potentially, whoever did, was it Keller that went last night? So that means Singer potentially could start today. MLB.com probable pitchers page has Bubic. That's who I'm assuming it is, because it's more fun to talk about it this way. If it is him, it looks like there's a 4.6 implied run total here for Detroit. Greg, when was the last time we saw the Motor City Kitties with such a lofty number? That's baseline for any other team in the league, but for them, this is a lofty number.
Yeah, so let me look, because like you said, we didn't have a confirmed starting pitcher when we started. I'm just really quickly searching to see if anything has changed since then.
Though there's some dork on Twitter who keeps typing in that it's not Bubic over and over.
Yeah, it looks like it's Brady Singer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And any reason
tomorrow
for the Royals
we'll look
to push back or skip Bubic, because oh my God, is he terrible? I mean, he can't get out anybody. I'm convinced he would have a 5 ERA if he pitched in the minor leagues right now. But yeah, it looks like it is Brady Singer pitching today, not Bubic. And also our data and tools all have Brady Singer. Okay. Which is going to make me not like the Tigers nearly as much as I would have liked them had Bubic been the pitcher.
Yes, so. Which is fair, because they're only the worst by a country mile in the league against righties. There's bad, there's really bad. Then you go down about another standard deviation, and then there's the Tigers.
Yeah.
So the fun conversation about the Motor City Kitties ends right now. Do you feel any love going towards the Royals in this matchup? Going against Bo Brisky, who is not feeling frisky.
So, well, I'll talk about the Brady Singer thing for a second, just because assuming he is the starter, which appears to be the case, this is a really positive matchup for him. You talk about how bad the Tigers are against right-handed pitching, and there's not that many salary-saving pitchers to get to, and Brady Singer is $7,600 over on DraftKings. FanDuel, I don't think it's necessary to play him on a single pitcher site. But for DraftKings purposes, if you're playing an offense where you need a salary-saving pitcher, 4.33 ERA for Singer, 3.85 expected ERA is a 22% K rate. And then you factor in that he has the easiest matchup possible against a right-handed pitcher. We don't have an ownership projection right now for Singer, but assuming he isn't going to be really popular, I think he's a decent source of salary savings.
All right. Reasonable. We will grant that without any issue whatsoever. But back here to the Royals here, sadly without Perez, they're not quite as good. We still have Bobby Witt, who's been a fun player, a lot of fun to take on Prize Picks, a lot of optimism to check where his fantasy projection is today. But for the last few weeks, it's been bubbling around 6.5. So that's something that's always interesting. You've got Hunter Dozier with his power. You've got MJ Melendez, who's catcher eligible. You have Vincent Pasquantino. I think that's correct. Pasquantino, VP 2,500 on DK, first base eligible, batting cleanup most likely. Andrew Benintendi. These are some reasonable options here. Whit Merrifield never afraid to steal a base. Doesn't feel like a full stack here, but Brisky has either been marginal or bad in his outings this season.
Yeah, I think he's bad. 4.55 ERA, but a 6.05 expected ERA and a 5.59 FIP. And also the outlook for opposing offense is pretty favorable. Another guy doesn't really generate ground balls and also allows a lot of home run per fly ball, 15.9% home run to fly ball rate. The issue is that the Kansas City Royals don't have a great offense, and they're going to be very popular today, projected for 9% ownership. So they're right there with the Miami Marlins as the fourth most popular offense on the slate. And that's more popularity than I want whenever I'm rostering the Kansas City Royals. So clearly a great spot for them. I get why people would want to go to them, but it's too much of the field getting to them for me to feel good about it. So I'd rather look elsewhere. We talked about a team like the St. Louis Cardinals before. Well, the Cardinals are picking up half the ownership of the Royals, but also have about a 30% greater chance to be a top stack. So a lot of teams that I just think are in better spots with lower ownership than the Royals. So I'd be looking elsewhere.
All right, let's look at our next game here. You've got the Texas Rangers in New York taking on the Metropolitans, another game that there's some potential humidity there is humidity, potential showers in the area. It's going to be in the mid 80s. Humidity is in the mid 60s. That's right on that magic number 150 borderline that we start to, or the borderline of that magic 150 number that we look to. However, you've got Martin Perez on the mound for Texas. Perez decided to have a career year this year. He has been quite good. He has, he's not Framber Valdez, but he does a pretty good job of limiting fly balls. He has a little bit of strikeout upside. He's someone that generally in the past never really got blown up, but this year somehow everything is being put together for him. He's going against the Mets, who are actually a formidable lineup at this point. Most everybody is healthy, so you've got Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, of course Pete Alonso is good. You got Eduardo Escobar, the switch hitter. You got Mark Conha and Jeff McNeil towards the bottom of the lineup. They both do well against lefties. You've got McCann, does well against lefties. I'm okay with these guys as one-offs or duos. I just don't really feel good about a stack, only because it's a rare event that Martin Perez gives up more than 4 runs, and there usually aren't that many home runs among that. So even if you collect all the right Mets that put together the production, a couple doubles, a few RBIs, and some runs scored, that's knocked out down by 2 solo shots from someone else, especially on DK scoring. So for me, I can see getting Perez as an SP2, not really going to force it in. Trevor Williams, tiny bit interesting at 6,300. I'd still rather go as my SP2 with Daniel Castellano going against Washington, but he's not somebody I'll X out, but I'll put him at around a 10% cap. If I don't get any, I'm not going to worry about it. If I get some, then it won't be more than 10%. We'll call that the who was it last night that got their ass kicked? Was it Ronzi Contreras?
By the way, he was one of this really surprised me. He was fairly popular on DK as an SP2 yesterday.
Yeah, I had him on 10% of my lineups. I did not quite get my upload up in time that had up my Yankees, so I just bequeathed my Yankees rainout stats to the Ronzi Contreras minus 12.5 when I finally turned off my phone last night and said, no point in looking at this any farther. But this one is an interesting one here because Williams has had his moments. He's had his moments, but there's no real leverage that we're going to be gaining against Texas because their key hitters, Semien and Adolis Garcia. What the hell? 6,100 for Garcia, 58 for Semien. This is just crazy on DK. The DK algorithm last night, one of those nights, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so I don't think there's very much to like from this game because Martin Perez is not a pitcher I really like rostering for DFS because as well as he's pitched this year, he still doesn't generate strikeouts, a 20.2% strikeout rate. That is the highest of his career. But it's still a low mark, and it's not like we're getting a very cheap version of Martin Perez. He's $8,700 over on DraftKings. He's $10,000 on FanDuel. Those are not playable price points for me in a difficult matchup against the Mets when he isn't going to be generating strikeouts. So I don't want to get to Martin Perez, but also he's been so good this year. He has a 2.2 ERA, a 2.22 ERA, 3.05 expected ERA, 2.59 FIP. All of those numbers are really strong, so I don't want to stack against him. So that kind of makes this an unplayable situation for me. Then on the other side of the game, Trevor Williams, he's very middle of the road mediocre, a pitcher I rarely roster for DFS purposes. But unless the Rangers are in a truly great spot, I don't want to stack them up for DFS purposes either. So there's nothing I like from this game. This is a game that I feel pretty decent about just leaving out of my player pool and looking to get exposure elsewhere.
Trevor Williams or Gibson? Who would you rather have? Real life and fantasy.
So here's the good news. I don't have to roster either of them. There's no rule. I can't remember. There was a couple of pitchers that Eric did this with me yesterday. He was like, do you want to roster player A or player B? And I was like, I'm just going to pay up for pitcher. I was like, I'm cool with Christian Javier and Corbin Burns and differentiating at offense. And
nice. Good call.
Which it wasn't like it was the ideal pitching combination. The funny thing is, so I didn't play the Diamondbacks last night. The 2 most popular offenses were the Diamondbacks and the Twins. I didn't play either of them. The Diamondbacks were obviously really good. The Twins were not. But what really worked for me on the slate yesterday was that a bunch of people apparently played Garrett Cole and Ronzi Contreras. Cole was infinitely better than Contreras despite the rain out. But just the fact that like in the $121 single entry, Garrett Cole was something like the 3rd most popular starting pitcher and Contreras was the 4th most popular. So it's like, oh, cool. I just played other guys at pitcher. The Twins were 35% owned as a stack or something like that in that contest. So it wasn't that hard to min cash in it just because of ownership reasons. But all that aside, bring that into this game and your question. I don't have to roster either of those guys today, which I'm comfortable giving as my answer.
All right. You know who I did play in a single game parlay? Because, we have Odd Shopper and some single game parlay information. I did. Some wise person said we should look at David Peralta as a home run. So I did. I went there. That was pretty good.
He was plus 450 when we had whenever I'm giving out bets, for the most part, I'm just looking at the data and our tools and trying to figure out like, okay, this looks like a good bet. Does it make sense to me from a logic standpoint? And it did yesterday. So yeah, that was one that popped up in Odd Shopper after the Diamondbacks lineup came out. I think we had one of the higher expected ROIs of the entire year for a home run prop. Actually, off the top of my head, these are the two highest ROIs we had on home run props this year. One was Kyle Tucker to homer off Lucas Giolito, which he did. And then last night was Peralta at plus 450 at Coors Field. So both of those panned out. Today, I love this bet. Here is one of the top bets we have today. Jose Urquidy under 6.5 strikeouts. Who the hell decided Jose Urquidy should have an over under 6.5 strikeouts?
That's crazy. How many times has he gotten 7 this year? Twice?
Once. He had one start where this was because I remember this slate. He had one start where he struck out 10 hitters and he was randomly chalk on that slate because all the cheap starters sucked. So people were just like, all right, let's just play Jose Urquidy. And he had his only good strikeout game of the entire year. I didn't look at betting stuff yet. I am betting Jose Urquidy under 6.5 strikeouts right now.
See, this makes me sad because we're on Zoom. So DK has told me they have no idea where I am because I'm on Zoom.
Well, I mean, that's why I have multiple computers in front of me. I've got 2 iPads now. I've got my phone. I've got 3 screens in front of me. This is a breeze.
So since this is a strategy show, let's just spend a minute on MLB same game parlays. All right. The only bet worse than an MLB same game parlay is an NHL same game parlay. Just know that things are not really in your favor on here. Now, one thing that some of the sports books do, they offer a little promotion. So depending on your sports book, sometimes you can get if you lose this bet with at least 3 legs in a same game parlay, we'll give you a free bet up to $10 that you use in the next 3 days. If you lose. So that's the only time I will ever play NHL and MLB same game parlays is for that. The other times you want to look at it is when you think it's going to be a high scoring game, because you can't bet unders, especially on DK. You can't bet unders on strikeouts. You can't bet unders. You can't bet shot attempts. This is why all these things are more fun to do over on Prize Picks, sponsor of the show. But you just got to go into knowing these are heavily juiced in your favor. When I do like to play the same game parlays is when I can find 2 or 3 bets that I really like that happen to be in the same game, and then I'll add a third and see if I can find one of these promos. So last night I did, and I like to do pairings of this, Greg. So last night I did 2 of them. I did Peralta to hit a home run, CJ Cron to get a hit, and Merrill Kelly to get 3 or more strikeouts. So that one came through. The one that did not come through was I had Charlie Blackmon to hit a home run. He did. David Peralta to get a hit. He did. And then on this one, instead of a hit for Cron, I had Cron for a home run. Because there's the other thing that's incredibly frustrating, even in Coors Field, is a lot of times what looks like it's going to be a home run when it goes off the bat ends up being a double. So sometimes I thought, okay, if I really, really like this spot for a player, particularly in the Coors Field one, and that's where I tend to play more of my win games or things like that, is where I play more of my same game parlays. I'll sometimes do a secondary bet where I use similar players and just mix and match the home run if I really like it, and then versus just a base hit, just to sort of, not semi-hedge within what I'm doing. And you can win all of them. It's not a problem. It's just to sort of counter hedge that. Do you do much with the single game parlays? I know you don't like the way the odds go against you, or the rake, if you will.
No, I don't. And there's
truly
individual scenarios where they do. So for instance, right now with Jose Urquidy, the max bet on the under for his strikeouts was not what I wanted it to be. I wanted to bet much more than it allowed me, but here's kind of a workaround for that. If you're on a book that limits you, you could often parlay that number with other stuff, and it'll kind of open up what the max bet is and let you get other action on it. So right there, I wanted to get as much money as I possibly could that they would allow me to on under 6.5 strikeouts for Jose Urquidy. They cap my max bet, but then if I also look at under 6.5 strikeouts for Urquidy and be like, oh, here's some other bets I like today. And I'll just parlay it with as many other individual things as I possibly can until they say like, all right, you're no longer allowed to bet this market anymore. But that's kind of the only scenario I use it for. There's other things also, more so for basketball. Like in the playoffs, there was a bunch of times that I parlayed the overs for Draymond Green stats because they correlate. Because there was a bunch of slates where Draymond Green had gotten in foul trouble a number of games in a row. And then the books were kind of pricing him as if like, all right, we're just projecting Draymond Green to play 28 minutes now. So his over-under for assists is 4.5, his over-under for rebounds is 5.5. And I liked both of those, but I also figured like, all right, if Draymond plays the minutes I think he's going to hit the over pretty easily. So there's correlation in taking the overs on all that. In that situation, I do. I don't think it's as applicable for baseball though.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense. But another thing you like to do, I know you like to look at some of the alternate lines, and that's something else. So for those of you that don't play, what it means is, Greg will look at the 6.5 over under for the strikeouts. You can go a lot of times, and they do this a lot in baseball or basketball and football. A lot of times they'll do it for strikeouts as well, or the run lines almost always have it. But you go in and you look and you say, oh, well, you can get 5.5, but even better odds in your favor, or 4.5 or under, and even better odds in your favor. You can flip that, and it's called laddering. And you can go, if you think Ashby, I think is one that I heard you guys doing on one of the shows where he had like a 7.5 over under at strikeouts, and you guys went at 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, and then that was ran out of it. So
the Ashby one, not that I know you're trying to get this exact, but when he first broke into the Brewers rotation earlier in the year, sportsbooks were just like, cool, Ashby's over under for strikeouts is 2.5, 3.5. And it was like, well, this is crazy. But because of the way the ladders work then, is you were able to get Aaron Ashby where it's like, all right, well, if his over under for strikeouts is 2.5 or 3.5, then it means you're getting 12-1 odds and stuff like that for him to have 7+ strikeouts or 8+ strikeouts. So those are the situations also where another thing too is, unfortunately, there aren't alternate lines for unders, because if I like the alternate under for Jose Urquidy if I like the under at 6.5, I would also like to be like, oh, could I get plus money on under 5.5? Could I get plus money? Could I get like plus 500 on under 4.5? But unfortunately, they don't do the alternate lines for strikeouts in the same way for the unders, at least. But yeah, I do think that's another good way, especially if you're somebody who, like me, very frequently my bets get limited, and then it's just another way to get more action on it. But yeah, I love laddering as well.
Right. And with that, the Pornbot winning comment of the day: stop jerking.
I thought it was gone. I thought we got rid of it.
No, they're back.
That's disappointing.
So
that's all right. I live my life based on whatever Pornbot tells me to do. Stop jerking. All right, you got it.
Whatever. That means you can't work at the soda fountain anymore. Is that what it says? There's a joke exactly one person in the audience is going to get.
I think these are just guidelines if you want to work at Disney. Like the theme park.
Oh, yeah. There we go. All righty. A couple more games. We'll talk a little prize picks. We'll do a quick glance at the later games, and we are going to get on out of here. But reminder, we are sponsored by Prize Picks. Use the promo code OSMO with your first deposit. They will give you a deposit match up to $100. If you use the promo code, I believe it's still OSMO, and I'll double check that. But you also get 30 free days of Stokastic premium content when you come in on our promo code. That is the gift that keeps on giving. Get a free subscription, win more money, lather, rinse, repeat. It's the way to go. It's a perpetual motion machine. Speaking of perpetual motion machines, George Kirby looked horrible in his last start. The opposing team just kept going around and around the base paths. So he gets a respite today against the Oakland Athletics, just a 3.1 implied run total. It's going to be a cooler day in Seattle. Again, this is going to be a 1:00 start. It's going to be in the low 70s for this game. Paul Blackburn on the other side of the mound. I'm okay rolling with Kirby at 7,800 on DK as an alternate or as an SP2. No issues with that. Probably cap him around 25 or 30%. I haven't looked to see where the field is. I will be gone when we hit lock for that. So I'm just going to be spraying and praying and hoping we have a little bit of fun while I'm off doing that 10K. But any interest in Blackburn, and where do you rate Kirby against? Obviously, we have the Webbs and the Ceases on this one. Where do you rate Kirby in this?
So zero interest in Paul Blackburn. And then as for George Kirby, On a points per dollar basis, he is the best cheap option on this slate. And here's the problem, though. He's the most popular pitcher on DraftKings today. He's projected for nearly 40% ownership. I don't think he should be that popular. And clearly his downside. We saw that last time out. I really like George Kirby as a prospect. He is crazy good stuff. Average fastball velocity is 96. He touches 100 miles per hour. Great off-speed stuff. But he's inconsistent, which is fairly common with young pitchers. And it's hard to get behind a young pitcher when they're going to be 40% owned. So it's the Oakland A's. It's a good matchup for him. I think that he warrants consideration. I'm just going to be underneath what the field is on him. I'm curious to see where the ownership ends up coming in later during the day. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people who just back off him because they rostered him last slate and it went really poorly. So I will be paying attention to the ownership to see how it changes. As things stand right now, though, it's hard for me to get to the nearly 40% George Kirby the field is at. And if he's going to stay at that level, I don't mind Oakland just as a leverage stack.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I'm glad he's up there a little bit higher because I will cap him out at 30%. I generally won't go over the more popular pitchers. I feel it's just a better way to watch them fail. And by not going over, I mean, I'll be within 5-10% of whatever we think the projection is. On occasion, if it's someone like Corbin Burns in yesterday's matchup, then I was comfortable going about 10 or 15% over. But typically I like the two pitcher sites because I'll start trying to gain leverage for or against on some of those mid-tier options. And then that allows you to get different on your offenses. So that's something I like to do on DraftKings, never really fully invest on a pitcher. The nice thing about MLB baseball is there are many different ways that you can win. Some are slate dependent, but others are just strategy dependent. You know, Greg's mentioned many times before, he likes to go with the premier pitchers and then differentiate on offense. And he's not afraid to walk away from the most popular offenses. I think that's also a fine strategy as well. In particular, the walking away from the most popular offenses. It's very difficult to really get over what the more popular offenses, and oftentimes you're better off just playing defense with them as a secondary stack or maybe a one-off or here or there, especially if it's like a Jose Ramirez or an Aaron Judge, and then maybe you get the 2 home runs or the home run that happens in the stack, and you mitigate a lot of the remainder of the scoring that your opposition has. So it's just different ways to look at this. What do you think about the Mariners here? JP Crawford's still serving a suspension, I believe, but that means Abraham Toro, the switch hitter, is going to be in there. They brought in another switch hitter, Carlos Santana, for a little bit of a veteran presence in the middle of the lineup, since, of course, Kyle Seager retired this offseason. Mitch Haniger's been out forever with various injuries this season. God forbid the Mariners are going to, get me a little excited, but all of a sudden 2 decent pitchers, top prospect who not named Jared Kelenic in the outfield, doing very, very well among the league leaders in steals. I saw an interview with him. He's like, I don't have the best speed, but they're not holding me. At some point they'll start holding me, and I will stop running. But until then, I'm just going to keep taking these bases. That's kind of an interesting, but he was like point blank. Yeah, I more often than not, once I'm on their radar, I won't be running as much. But until then, I'm off to the races.
Yeah. So the one thing that Blackburn's been solid this year, and I don't think he's a great pitcher long-term, but at the same time as well, he's a 3.12 ERA this year, 3.85 expected ERA. Seattle's a pitcher-friendly park. Both these teams play in pitcher-friendly parks, both Seattle and Oakland. This game is going to be played in Seattle. And Seattle is one of the lower top stack odds of the day, right around 2%. So it's really hard for me to reasonably want to get to them. I don't think there's a whole lot of upside here.
All right, I think I did this on a show with Terry and with Eric and not you. But Paul Blackburn has pitched in parts of 6 different seasons. How many games has Paul Blackburn pitched in for his career?
For his career? Well, it's not very many because I don't think he's ever pitched a full season. So he's only made something like 40 starts.
Yeah, 45 total appearances.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It feels like we talk about him every year, which we do, and then we don't talk about him because he's hurt.
Also what happens is he generally sucks and gets sent down to the minor leagues. So I think most seasons it's like, hey, and he's only pitched with Oakland also.
Yeah.
But he's had injury issues, but a lot of it too is, oh, look, he made 10 starts for us this year. He was terrible. Let's take him out of the rotation. And the next year it's like, hey, our team's kind of bad. Let's try Paul Blackburn out again. Oh, right. He's no good. Let's stop with this. But yeah, I mean, his results for his career, he has something like a career ERA around 5. So it's not like he's earned himself a long stay most seasons.
Correct. It's always amusing when you run into stuff like that. Anything else from this game, or shall we hit our last one of this slate?
Nope. We could talk about Quadzilla now.
All right. Who the hell is Quadzilla? Is that a Spencer Strider reference?
Yeah, that's his nickname, Quadzilla. So the story with Spencer Strider, and I'll use this to transition to talk about his outlook as a starting pitcher today, is he was if I'm not mistaken, he played multiple positions when he was first drafted. He played in the field, he was pitcher, and teams weren't really exactly sure what to make of him. And as a pitching prospect, he threw in the low 90s and, was decent, but nothing special. And then he focused really heavily on a leg training program and basically just got his lower body jacked in the offseason and came back and was throwing like 10 miles per hour harder. So everybody started calling him Quadzilla because that's where all of his power comes from as a pitcher. Clearly paying dividends now. He's throwing upwards of 102 miles per hour as a starting pitcher, 36.2% K rate, 3.21 expected ERA. His ownership is much too low right now. If this is actually going to hold to lock, if he's going to be 25% owned at E200, yeah, sign me up against the Cincinnati Reds, because I would much rather play Spencer Strider at 25% ownership than George Kirby at 38% ownership, which that's what we have right now as far as the SP2s go on DraftKings. I think Strider's a really good pivot off of Kirby. For FanDuel purposes, Strider is only 13% owned. That's also a number to come overweight to the top of when he's only 7,700. So on FanDuel single pitcher site, Strider at 7,700 is far less popular than George Kirby is when Kirby's $800 more expensive. So Strider had that one outing where he was really bad against the Giants. That aside, he's looked really solid as a starter. Considerable strikeout upside. He has the highest strikeout rate of any starter on today's slate, which, it's hard to top a 36.2% K rate for a starter, but I think this is a really good spot for Spencer Strider.
Yeah, so he was one of the guys I wrote up in the free Spotlight Pitchers and Top Stacks article. I will drop that in. I do a stack for each of the slates, and then usually the top two pitchers, and then I'll either do a wild card pitcher if it's a big main slate, or I'll throw in an earlier late slate picture. But Strider here, so I said, even though Great American Ballpark is a bandbox, even this advantage is not enough to prop up the Cincinnati offense. This season, the Reds have an 85 WRC plus against right-handed hurlers, which is the third lowest in the league. While they somewhat mitigate strikeouts with the 21.6 strikeout rate, their 127 ISO is the fourth worst, and their 145 extra base hits, that's it, 145 extra base hits, is ahead of only the Tigers, who have 137. Yikes. Definitely fire up Strider.
They've been no good. Part of it is because the sixth highest paid player on the Reds roster this year is Ken Griffey Jr.
Hey,
so what's that?
The Mariner legend, Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah, Reds legend as well. Legend is really apt when it comes to the Reds, because legend isn't, he was only there when
he's more like a myth because he barely played there. Not really a legend.
And also he was just no good when he was there. I think he had one good season, Griffey, for the Reds. Although actually, I think because so many of his years were negative wins above replacement in Cincinnati, he's more valuable to them now than he was at the tail end of his career there.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's true. So in 2006, he was worth negative 0.6 wins for the Reds. In 2007, he was worth negative 0.6 wins. 2008, where he played with multiple teams, he was negative 0.5 wins for the Reds. So yeah, he's more valuable to the Reds now than he was when he was actually playing for them for those last few years.
That's just bizarre. That's bizarre. But wrapping up with Strider, he 50, I think he's like 53 or 55 innings, 13.2 strikeout per nine. That's second to only Dylan Cease. If he had enough innings to qualify, he's about 35 innings short of qualifying. Would you look at Tyler Mahle at all, or do you consider any of the Braves against him?
Yeah, so the Braves have upside in this spot. They're playing in Cincinnati. Like you said, it's a really hitter-friendly park, but they're the most negatively leveraged offense on FanDuel for us today. And then over on DraftKings, not quite as over-owned, but still 12% ownership, 10% chance to be a top stack, while also being one of the most expensive offenses on the slate. That and Tyler Mahle's pretty solid with a lot of strikeout upside. So we haven't talked too much about contrarian starting pitchers to like, but I think Mahle is one of them that fits the bill because he's a boom bust option. Sometimes Mahle's kind of good. Sometimes he's kind of shit. He's a 4.53 ERA, much better peripheral numbers, 3.26 expected ERA, but he's a 26% strikeout rate. And the Braves have the second highest K rate in all of baseball against right-handed pitching. So there's a path to upside here for Tyler Mahle. There's a clear path to downside as well, but considering what the Braves ownership is, I think Molly's an interesting GPP pivot option, kind of similar to Yusei Kikuchi the other night, where it's the type of pitcher where it's like, hey, if he's going to get hit, he's going to get hit very hard. But if he finds some success, it's going to be via strikeouts, and he's going up against a chalky offense. So Tyler Mahle, I do see a lot of parallels with him and Kikuchi from a couple nights ago against the Rays.
All right, let's talk a little bit of prize picks, and then we'll cover some quick thoughts on the later slate, the 5-game secondary main slate for the 250 or so of you in chat. We just need 25 more likes, and you can see the Sean V t-shirt that I am wearing. The only Sean V t-shirt that is in existence. So Prize Picks is a daily prop-based contest. If you use the promo code OSMO, they will give you a deposit match up to your first $100. You put in 50, they give you 50. You put in 100, they give you 100. You put in 200, they give you 100 because it's a $100 deposit match. But that promo code OSMO also gets you 30 free days of Stokastic premium content. There's no sharks, there's no optimizers, there's no mass multi-entry. It is you against their questions. They have questions in multiple sports or player props. So currently on the board right now, they have let's see, the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, because, you know, that's a good one to look at. We actually have content for that, courtesy of Matt Gajeski. You have CFL, NFL with season-long yardage props and touchdown props. That's a lot of fun. Xfinity racing, NASCAR racing. Today they've got lacrosse, disc golf, CSGO, COD, NBA Summer League. You got WNBA. You've got USFL, soccer, Rocket League, PGA, F1, NBA, MMA. They got everything. You want first half bets? They got them. You want fourth quarter bets? They got them. You want one first and second inning bets? They've got those as well. Let's talk a little bit of baseball. Couple things I really like that they have here is pitches thrown, I think is a fun one. And I think pitchers scoring. So their pitcher scoring basically mirrors FanDuel. Their hitcher scoring essentially, not quite the same, but essentially mirrors DraftKings. So what I like to do is find the pitchers that I think may underperform or could get rocked. And then I like to see what their pitch count is, as well as what their fantasy score is. Now, usually for pitch count, and for a lot of these things, Prize Picks, especially for I don't want to say the more obscure sports, but sports like baseball, they're using season-long averages to come up with some of these numbers. So you can find, and they apply things here and there, but you can come up with some wrinkles. So things I don't really, or I like the under on today, would be like Jackson Tetriol, 93.5 pitches. I would prefer the under on that one. Kyle Gibson, 95.5, prefer the under on that one. Dylan Cease, I took his over in the last one. He was at 101.5. I think he ended up at 101. I just missed that one. I don't like the 101.5 against San Francisco, but Shane McClanahan is someone you look at a lot. He averages like 105 pitches per start. He's at 95.5, but he's going against Toronto. So for players like that, you may want to look at them and say, here's some way they could get knocked out early. Jordan Lyles would be one, 95.5 pitches. I would like the under of that. You can sense a trend here, similar to when you're looking at taking unders for people with strikeouts. Like I have, I can't remember if it was you or Eric who mentioned last night going against the Colorado starter, but he only ended up playing 2 innings last night, and I think he only got like 1 strikeout, and his number was like 2.5. But if you're looking for disaster to strike, that's when you can look at some of these numbers. And I like the pitches thrown because it's another way that you can get leverage with the information or projections that we have. That's not available on sports books. I also like pitchers total outs. So you want to pay attention to some of those. Anything standing out for you on Prize Picks today from the jump?
Well, first of all, EMac, the people want to see your shirt.
Did we get there?
Did we? Did we?
Are we at 100 yet? We better be at 100.
Are we at 100?
Sean V, you better get her 88.
I'm making a producer exception. I want to see the shirt.
Do you want to see this shirt? All right.
And then after you show the shirt, I'll go through prospects.
All right. So I don't think it's a little dark in here, so I brought my flashlight to maybe see it, but it's what would Sean V do? WWSVD, a little baseball home plate. My wife made that for me.
Very nice.
We were talking about Sean V, and I made a joke about what would Sean V do, and she's like, I could make you a T-shirt around that. I said, oh, let's talk. And she came up with this. We no longer use this color. When I say we, she likes to make a lot. She has a printer and a heat press and all this stuff. So she makes a lot of fun t-shirts for races and her friends and for birthdays and stuff like that. But we learned this was a practice t-shirt. Sorry, Sean. We learned this color of red doesn't go good on dark. So
depending on the context, I have a lot of questions about what scenario you're in with your wife. We're like, what would Sean do in this situation? So I have questions there. As for prize picks, I'm looking at this hot dog eating contest. And if I'm just judging people based on names, don't actually put money on this. I just think the hot dog contest is funny to talk about. There's a guy named Joffrey Esper, which that sounds like a fancy name, right? You're telling me this guy's going to eat more than 5.5 hot dogs per minute with a name like Joffrey?
Because he's going to have a knife and fork with pinky in the air, right?
Exactly. You can't eat him that. You can't eat him that fast. He's got a napkin. He's got to dab his lips up after every bite. There's no way that this guy Joffrey Esper is going to go out and eat more than 5.5 hot dogs per minute. So we're taking the under there.
All right, that sounds.
What would Sean B do in this situation? He'd take the under on Joffrey Esper.
I believe he would. But sometimes you want to use that barometer of Sean B to kind of do the opposite, like opposite George. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a very valuable tool. It's like when as touts / content contributors, when we get people that say you suck, you're always wrong. It's like, I wish I knew somebody who was always wrong, because then I would just do the opposite of whatever they're saying. It doesn't quite work that way. It may feel like it does, but it doesn't quite work that way. But check that one out. Looking at the later slate here, pitching, not as good as the early slate. So I think Tyler Anderson going against the San Diego Padres is a good one. You've got Manny Machado, who started 2 games ago. Last night he pinch hit in the 8th inning. I forget if he grounded out or struck out, but he did not get on base. But Tyler Anderson going against the Padres, I think, is reasonable. Nestor Cortez and Yu Darvish would be the viable alternatives. Drew Rasmussen coming back from a hamstring injury after missing the last 3 weeks. Tough matchup for him in Toronto for that doubleheader. So you also have what did I like for offense here? What do you like?
Not a lot of, so just kind of summing
up. The Red Sox against Alec Meek Mills. There we go.
It's really hard to find pitchers to like today. The pitching options are awful tonight. So it's a 5-game slate. Most of the pitchers suck, and there's a Coors Field game. By the way, the pitchers at Coors Field are Dallas Keuchel and Austin Gomber. So that leaves a lot to be desired. Let me pull up Gomber's numbers.
Did they pick up Keuchel off the scrap heap just for this start so they don't have to shatter the confidence of one of their decent pitchers?
I don't. I mean, there's like just there's no way Dallas Keuchel pitching at Coors Field goes well. And who's worse? Who's a worse lefty right now between Gomber and Keuchel? I guess Keuchel, but Gomber has a 6.55 ERA, 5.26 expected ERA. So nothing worse than a Coors Field slate with 2 terrible Coors Field pitchers. Then the other
last game of the night too, Greg.
Yeah, and then the other pitchers to consider today, Aaron Savali, he was supposed to pitch last night against the Yankees. That game gets scratched. He stinks. He is an ERA north of 6 this year. Alec Mills, you just called him meek Alec Mills. He's no good. Then you got Josh Winkowski, who generates no strikeouts. Thomas Hatch is going to be pitching, which, that's probably going to be more of a bullpen game. So just by process of elimination, I mean, I think the pitcher player pool has to be Yu Darvish, Tyler Anderson, Nestor Cortez, and Drew Rasmussen would be a maybe, but he's probably going to be on a pitch count today because he hasn't pitched for an extended period of time. So there's no pitchers I really feel good about getting to other than Darvish, Anderson, and Cortez just by process of elimination. I don't even know how else I approach these pitchers.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other way. Like, this is where you're capping the Coors Field guys at like 5%. If you even in fact just take them out, I'd probably, on the 2 pitcher sites, I'd probably do the other 3, Savali, Winkowski, and Mills around 20%. And then I'd let fly with everybody else and just hope that those other guys implode and you luck into the better scores. It's almost feels like, even though there are 10 pitchers available, this feels almost more like a raw score situation, Greg, like a short slate NBA than it does. It's just like, how can I capture the points? God forbid you get a negative double digits from a Roansy Contreras outing today, like we saw last night. Crazy. All right. Final thoughts before we get on out of here. I have a final thought. I know we have the Stokastic MVP program, so you can get exclusive Stokastic discounts as well as being able to beta test our new tools and features by joining our Stokastic MVP text program. That's it. You don't have to be an actual paying subscriber. So you sign up by texting MVP22. That's MVP22 to 656-441-7. That number is available on the site. It's probably on the screen. I'm dropping it into chat. You can get it on the site. But this is a chance for those of you that, on a bit of a budget. We're doing offers about once. They don't spam you either, because I've signed up for it because I was curious to see what it is. You get about one text a week. Usually giving you an offer for a discount for a week-long subscription for this, or try out this, or hey, we've got some tools here. Do this, and you can get to the beta access point. We're bringing in a lot of new tools. We want user experience testing on them. I know there's a lot in the works for NBA and NFL, but here's your chance to get to see some of the early tools. I think they had the MLB batters tool. I think was one of the beta testing things that they did. So you get to see the premium tools for free. So all we're asking for is just your phone number. And again, it's not a spamming text, because then there'd be no point, right? We wouldn't want to sell it and push it to you if you guys were going to be inundated with it. Similar to OddsShopper. All you got to do for OddsShopper now, just enter your email address. That's it. Once you do that, you get to see all the projections, all the ROI, expected ROIs, all the everything with it. Just asking for your email. And again, that basically just gives you the same discount stuff that you're getting on the Stokastic MVP thing. So again, just another way to get back to you. All right, final thoughts, Greg, and we'll get on out of here.
Yeah, so I'll just wrap up by talking about offenses on the night slate. And you can make a case for a number of offenses today. We just talked about how hard it is to figure out starting pitchers to like, because almost all of them suck. But here's the good news. Of the teams that are decent offenses going up against shitty starting pitching, one of them is going overlooked by the field, and that is the Boston Red Sox against Alec Mills. And Mills this year, he's only made 6 appearances, 1 start, and 9.87 ERA, 8.24 expected ERA. It's really bad results, but it's a limited sample size. But look at last year. 5.07 ERA, 4.79 expected ERA. Zips has him projected with a fair town level of a guy with a 5.46 ERA. So considering we're getting somewhat low ownership on the Red Sox at 11% compared to the Coors Field teams, which are both going to be in about 25% of teams' lineups, the Rockies projected for 25% ownership as a stack, and then 22.5% for the Cardinals. It's a good spot for the Boston Red Sox. They have a better offense than either of those teams. If I'm looking to get contrarian today, I think there is reason to consider the Boston Red Sox. So I'll call them my favorite offense for tonight's 5-game slate.
All right. And then the last one we'll do, I'm going over to Prize Picks. This is another one they have, is home runs. I want to see if they have the Reds or the Red Sox on this. They are not popping out. I don't see them. But you can get Buxton, Sanchez, and Urshela against Lyles. All they have to do, one of them has to hit a home run. Guess what? Lyles gave up 37 or 38 last year, led the league. Another intriguing one, you've got Benintendi, Witt, and Dozier going against Bo Brisky. That one feels somewhat intriguing there as well. Oh, I'm sorry. There is Devers, Story, and JD Martinez. Do you think one of them's going to hit a home run today against Alec Mills and then perhaps the bullpen? Why, yes, I will be locking that one in right
now. Perhaps. I like that as well. Good way to close out the show. Good information there from EMac.
All right. With that, gamers, you can follow Greg on Twitter at G. Ehrenberg DFS.
DFS, yes.
I'm at EMac DFS, and it is Stokastic _COM. With that, gamers, good luck.